Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
I never thought I'd be the kind of man who'd find himself piecing together evidence of his wife's affair like some amateur detective. But there I was, sitting in my car outside a downtown hotel, watching the woman I'd loved for 8 years walk out hand in hand with a stranger. Let me back up and tell you how it all started to unravel. I'm not anybody special, just a regular guy who thought he had a decent marriage. Lauren and I had been together for 8 years, and sure, we had our rough patches like any couple. Looking back, I realize I was probably too accommodating, always the one backing down from arguments, trying to keep the peace. Lauren was. Well, she knew what she wanted and wasn't shy about getting it. I used to think that was attractive. Her confidence, her determination. Now I'm not so sure. A few weeks ago, she came into our living room dressed like she was going to some fancy gala. This tight black dress I'd never seen before, heels that added 4 inches to her height, makeup so perfect it looked professional. She looked incredible, I'll give her that, but something felt off about the whole thing. "I'm going out tonight," she announced, grabbing her purse like it was no big deal. "Where to?" I asked, closing my laptop. "There's this new place downtown. Jessica and her crowd are checking it out. Thought I'd join them." My stomach immediately knotted up. Lauren had never been the clubbing type. She always complained about loud music and crowded spaces. At least that's what she'd told me for years. And Jessica. Well, let's just say she wasn't exactly a stabilizing influence. She was the kind of friend who encouraged bad decisions and seemed to thrive on drama. "Lauren, I don't think that's such a good idea," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's getting late, and you know what those places are like. We've heard the stories." She rolled her eyes so dramatically I thought they might get stuck that way. "Oh, come on, Tom. Don't start with the overprotective husband routine. It's just a few drinks. What's the problem?" "The problem is, I have a bad feeling about it," I replied, standing up. "Can't you just stay home tonight? We could watch that series you've been wanting to start, or I could make dinner." That's when she exploded. "Stay home and do the same mind-numbing thing we always do?" Her voice was ice cold and cut right through me. "That sounds thrilling." "I didn't mean it that way," I started, but she wasn't listening anymore. "You don't own me, Tom," she snapped, snatching her purse. "If you actually loved me, you'd trust me." Before I could get another word out, she stormed toward the door and slammed it so hard the whole house shook. I just stood there in the living room, feeling like someone had sucker punched me. What had just happened? This wasn't the Lauren I knew. Or maybe it was, and I'd been fooling myself all these years. I settled back onto the couch, my mind spinning. Should I call her? Text her? Follow her? Something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe fear, or maybe that nagging voice in my head telling me this wasn't just an innocent night out with friends. The hours crawled by like torture. I tried everything to distract myself, flipping through TV channels, playing some mindless phone game, even reorganizing the kitchen cabinets. Nothing worked. My phone sat there on the coffee table, silent. No calls, no texts. Around midnight, I heard a car pull into our driveway. I jumped up and peered through the window. It was Lauren, but she was getting out of the passenger side, laughing at something the driver was saying. The guy didn't look like any rideshare driver I'd ever seen. Too familiar with her, touching her arm, leaning in close. My chest tightened as I watched her thank him and start walking toward the house. The driver didn't leave right away. He just sat there with the engine running like he was waiting for something. When Lauren walked through the front door, she froze when she saw me standing there. Her makeup was smeared, her hair looked like she'd been running her hands through it, and there was this faint smell of alcohol mixed with cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "Have a good time?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I'd intended. Her smile disappeared. "Why are you still up?" "What do you think?" She rolled her eyes again and tossed her purse onto the kitchen counter. "You're being ridiculous, Tom. I went out with friends, had some drinks, and came home. That's it." But it wasn't it, not even close. Something about her body language, her tone. Everything screamed that she was hiding something. "Who was the guy in the car?" I asked, crossing my arms. She hesitated. Just for a second, but long enough for me to catch it. "Just a friend," she said too quickly. A friend? Or something more? God, you're so paranoid, she snapped. This is exactly why I needed to get out. You're suffocating me. And with that, she stormed upstairs, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding and my mind racing. I didn't sleep at all that night. I couldn't. Something was very wrong, and I was determined to find out what. Little did I know, that night was just the opening act of a nightmare I never saw coming. The next morning, Lauren acted like absolutely nothing had happened. She came downstairs in one of her usual oversized sweaters, hair pulled back in a messy bun, casually pouring coffee like we hadn't almost had a nuclear meltdown the night before. "Morning," she said, her voice light and cheerful. I didn't respond right away. I just sat at the kitchen table watching her every move. How could she be so casual after everything? "Morning," I finally muttered, staring into my half-empty mug. She didn't even look at me. Instead, she grabbed her phone from the counter and started scrolling through it, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. I couldn't help wondering who she was texting. Was it the guy from last night? "I've got some things to take care of today," she said casually, still focused on her phone. "I'll probably be out for a while." A pang of irritation shot through me. Things to take care of? On a Sunday? She sighed and finally looked up at me. "What's with the interrogation, Tom? I just need to pick up a few items. Do I need your permission now?" Her tone was sharp, but I wasn't backing down this time. "I don't care about your errands, Lauren. I care about the fact that you came home last night smelling like another man." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance. "For God's sake, Tom, I told you it was nothing. Someone spilled their drink on me, and that's it. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic?" I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something wasn't adding up. "Who was the guy in the car?" I pressed. She groaned and rolled her eyes like I was the most exhausting person on the planet. "He's a friend of Jessica's, okay? He offered me a ride because she had to leave early. That's it. Can we please drop this now?" Her story sounded too polished, like she'd spent all night rehearsing it. I didn't buy it for a second, but I knew pushing her further right then wouldn't get me anywhere. "Fine," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Go take care of your things." She stared at me for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly like she didn't trust my sudden change of tone. But then she shrugged, grabbed her purse, and headed out the door. As soon as I heard her car pull out of the driveway, I grabbed my phone. If she wasn't going to give me answers, I'd find them myself. The first thing I did was text Jessica. We weren't exactly close, but we'd exchanged numbers once during a group dinner. Me. "Hey Jessica, quick question. Who was the guy who gave Lauren a ride last night?" It took her a few minutes to respond, and every second felt like an eternity. "Jessica." "What guy?" My heart sank. "Me. The guy who dropped her off. She said he's a friend of yours." Her response came almost instantly this time. "Jessica. I have no idea what she's talking about. She left with some guy she met at the club. I assumed she told you." The words hit me like a physical blow. She had lied. Lauren had looked me straight in the eye and lied. I sat there staring at my phone screen, my mind racing. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? Was this a one-time thing, or was there more to it? By the time Lauren came home a few hours later, carrying shopping bags and wearing that same casual smile, I had worked myself into a complete frenzy. But when she walked through the door, I forced myself to play it cool. "Get everything you needed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yep," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I replied, glancing back at my phone. I'd already made up my mind. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. Lauren clearly wasn't going to tell me the truth, so I'd have to find it myself. That night, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. She'd left it on the nightstand, and for once, it wasn't locked. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages, looking for anything that might give me a clue. And then I found it. A thread of messages with a number saved under the name Alex. Alex. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? Lauren. Soon, I'll figure something out. He's been suspicious lately. My stomach dropped. My worst fears had just been confirmed. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I didn't even know where to start. Instead, I lay awake in bed, listening to the sound of her breathing next to me, wondering how I'd missed all the signs. But one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of determination. Lauren was still asleep, her face peaceful like nothing was wrong. I couldn't believe how she could lie so effortlessly and then sleep so soundly next to me. It made me sick. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbed my phone, and went downstairs. My mind was reeling from those messages with Alex. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage had been turned upside down. I wasn't going to sit back and let this happen. I needed answers. First, I looked up the number from the texts. It wasn't registered under a name, but a quick search confirmed it was local. That didn't tell me much, but it was a start. I saved it to my phone under a fake name, just in case Lauren somehow saw it. I spent the rest of the morning pacing around the living room, trying to figure out my next move. Confronting her seemed logical, but I knew Lauren. She'd just deny everything, twist the story around, and somehow make me look like the bad guy. No, I needed more than just a few text messages. I needed proof she couldn't talk her way out of. When Lauren finally came downstairs, she was back to her usual bubbly self, humming some tune as she poured coffee. "You're up early," she said with a smile, as if everything was perfectly normal. "Couldn't sleep?" I replied, keeping my voice flat. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she just didn't care. She grabbed her phone off the counter and started scrolling through it, her face lighting up with amusement at whatever she was looking at. Probably texting Alex, I thought bitterly. "What's your plan for today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "I might hit the gym," she said without looking up, "and maybe run a few errands." Her vague answer only fueled my suspicions. "Need a ride?" I offered, half hoping she'd slip up and mention something incriminating. She laughed and finally looked at me. "No, I've got it covered, thanks though." I nodded, trying not to let my frustration show. As soon as she left, I decided to take things up a notch. If she thought she could lie to my face and get away with it, she was dead wrong. I started by calling Jessica. She was hesitant to talk at first, probably worried about getting caught in the middle of things, but I convinced her to tell me what she knew. "Look, Tom, I didn't want to say anything because it's not my business," Jessica admitted. "But yeah, Lauren left with some guy last night. I don't know who he was, but they looked pretty comfortable together. I assumed she told you." "She didn't," I said through gritted teeth. "Do you have any idea who he is? Did she mention his name?" "No, she didn't," Jessica said. "But if I were you, I'd check her social media. She's been posting stuff that seems different lately." That was all I needed to hear. I thanked Jessica and hung up, my heart pounding as I opened Lauren's Instagram. Sure enough, her recent posts told a story I hadn't been paying attention to. Photos of her all dressed up, drinks in hand, captions like "living for myself" and "finally feeling free." It was subtle, but the tone was completely different. She wasn't posting about us anymore. No pictures of our dinners together, no mentions of movie nights. It was like she was creating a separate life, one where I didn't exist. Then I noticed something odd in one of her photos from what looked like the club she'd gone to. There was a man in the background, leaning against the bar, watching her with this smirk on his face. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. I saved the photo and sent it to Jessica. "Me. Do you recognize this guy?" She responded almost immediately. "Jessica. That's Alex. He's there almost every weekend. Kind of a player from what I've heard." "Alex. The guy from the text messages." Now I had a face to match the name. I spent the rest of the day putting pieces together. I checked her phone records, something I'd never done before but now felt completely justified doing. Sure enough, there were dozens of calls and texts to Alex's number over the past few weeks. By the time Lauren came home, I had all the proof I needed. But instead of confronting her, I decided to play it smart. She was too good at lying, too skilled at deflecting. If I wanted the real truth, I'd have to catch her in the act. That night, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a GPS tracking app on her car. It wasn't something I was proud of, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Over the next few days, I tracked her movements. She wasn't going to the gym or running errands like she claimed. She was meeting Alex at a hotel downtown every single day. The realization hit me like a truck. This wasn't just some fling or a moment of weakness. This was a full-blown affair, and she'd been lying to my face about it for weeks. I sat in my car outside that hotel, watching as they walked out together, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard I thought it might snap. I wanted to confront them right then and there, but something held me back. I needed a plan. I needed to make sure she couldn't wiggle her way out of this one. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up with a mixture of anger and determination coursing through my veins. After everything I'd witnessed, I was done waiting around. I had enough evidence to confront Lauren, but I wanted to see just how far she'd go before admitting the truth. She came downstairs wearing her usual cheerful expression, as if she wasn't living a complete double life. "What's for breakfast?" she asked, pulling a mug from the cabinet. "Whatever you want," I replied flatly, barely looking up from my coffee. She paused, clearly picking up on my mood. "Are you still upset about the other night?" I set my cup down and met her gaze. "Should I be upset, Lauren?" Her expression didn't change, but I caught a flicker of something. Maybe worry, maybe guilt. "Tom, I told you it was just a night out with friends. You're making this way bigger than it needs to be." I almost laughed at how easily the lies rolled off her tongue. "Friends like Alex?" I asked, watching her closely. Her reaction was immediate. Her face went pale and she froze, the mug halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, leaning forward. "The texts, the hotel meetings. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know." She set the mug down with shaky hands, her voice turning defensive. "Have you been spying on me? That's a serious violation of trust, Tom." The irony was rich coming from her. "Trust? Don't talk to me about trust when you've been sneaking around with another man." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, she dropped the innocent act entirely. "So what if I have?" she said, her voice cold. "What did you expect, Tom? You're boring, predictable, and you're always moping around the house. I needed some excitement, and Alex gives me that." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. I sat there, stunned, as she continued her tirade. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. She was blaming me for her betrayal. "Unbelievable," I muttered, standing up. "You don't even care, do you? About me, about us. 8 years, Lauren, and this is how you repay me?" She crossed her arms, her face defiant. "Don't act like you're perfect, Tom. You're not exactly a prize yourself." I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Losing my temper wouldn't solve anything. "You know what, Lauren? You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. I needed air, space to think. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete unraveling of everything I thought my life was. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. I spent the next few hours driving aimlessly around town, trying to process everything Lauren had said. Her words kept echoing in my mind. "You're boring, predictable." The sheer audacity of her trying to pin her affair on me lit a fire in my chest. But I wasn't going to let her twist this narrative anymore. When I finally parked at a quiet spot by the lake, I decided I needed to be smarter about this. Confronting her had only scratched the surface. She wasn't remorseful, and she clearly thought she held all the cards. But she didn't know I had more evidence than just those text messages. I called a lawyer. It felt like the first real step toward regaining control of my life. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, so I asked about my rights, what a divorce might look like, and how to protect myself financially. The lawyer was calm and professional, but her advice was crystal clear. Document everything, and don't let Lauren catch on to what I was planning. By the time I got home, Lauren was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. She barely glanced at me when I walked in. "You done with your dramatic exit?" she asked with a smirk. I ignored her and went straight upstairs. Her reaction didn't matter anymore. What mattered was staying one step ahead. Over the next few days, I started gathering everything I could. Bank statements, emails, receipts. Anything that could prove Lauren's betrayal and protect me in court. I also kept tracking her movements with the GPS. She was so predictable, it almost made me sick. Every other day, she'd claim to run errands or go to the gym, and every time she'd end up at that same hotel. But one day, something changed. The GPS showed her car parked somewhere unfamiliar, a house on the other side of town. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check it out. I parked a few houses down and waited, my heart pounding. After about 20 minutes, Lauren walked out with Alex. They were laughing, her arm casually draped around his waist. He leaned in to kiss her, and she didn't hesitate. I snapped a few photos with my phone, my hands shaking. This was it. The proof I needed. But as I watched them, something about Alex's demeanor caught my attention. He wasn't just some random fling. He seemed comfortable, confident, like he knew he had her wrapped around his finger. That night, Lauren came home late as usual. I pretended to be asleep when she crawled into bed, the faint smell of cologne still clinging to her. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't let her know what I'd seen. Not yet. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. "I have the proof," I told her. "What's the next step?" Her voice was steady and reassuring. "We'll start drafting the paperwork. But Tom, if you want this to go smoothly, you'll need to keep playing along. Act like everything is normal until we file. Can you do that?" It felt like a tall order, but I agreed. For the next few days, I put on my best performance, acting like the clueless, trusting husband Lauren thought I was. I even cooked dinner one night just to keep her off my trail. But inside, I was boiling. Every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed me goodbye, I wanted to scream. She had no idea what was coming, and that gave me the slightest sense of satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my life. And I wasn't going to stop until Lauren's web of lies came crashing down around her. Keeping up the act was harder than I'd imagined. Every forced smile, every casual conversation we had, felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. Lauren seemed completely oblivious to the tension, carrying on with her lies as though nothing had changed. The following weekend, she announced she was going out with the girls again. I didn't even flinch. I nodded, gave her a half-hearted, "have fun," and watched as she left the house in that same tight black dress that had become her uniform for these so-called nights out. But this time, I was ready. Instead of sitting at home stewing, I followed her. I kept a safe distance, my heart racing as I watched her car weave through the streets until it pulled into a familiar parking lot. The hotel. I parked down the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I watched her step out of the car. She adjusted her dress, looked around nervously, then headed inside. A few minutes later, Alex arrived in his beat-up pickup truck. He was wearing that same smug grin, like he owned the world. Or at least my wife. I waited for what felt like an eternity before making my move. I didn't want to storm in and cause a scene that would give Lauren a chance to manipulate the situation. Instead, I walked calmly to the front desk. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm looking for Lauren and Alex. I think they checked in a little while ago." The receptionist gave me a suspicious look. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out that information." I slid a $50 bill across the counter. "I just need to know the room number, that's all." Her hesitation lasted only a moment before she pocketed the money and scribbled a number on a piece of paper. "Room 237, she whispered. I thanked her and walked to the elevator, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and anticipation. When I reached the second floor, I stood outside the door for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. I didn't have a plan for what I'd do once I opened that door, but I knew I couldn't walk away. I knocked twice, then stepped back. There was a moment of silence, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. The door opened just a crack, and there was Lauren. Her hair was tousled, her lipstick smeared. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice cold. "But I think I already know the answer." Before she could respond, Alex appeared behind her, shirtless and grinning. "Well, this is awkward," he said, clearly unfazed by my presence. I looked at Lauren, waiting for her to say something. Anything. But she just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Nothing to say?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and hurt. "No excuses this time?" She finally found her voice. "Tom, this isn't what it looks like." Alex laughed. "Oh, come on, Lauren, he's not that stupid. Give the guy some credit." That broke something in me. I turned and walked away without another word, ignoring Lauren's frantic calls for me to stop. I didn't trust myself to stay. By the time I got home, my emotions had shifted from rage to numbness. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, wondering how my life had come to this. I knew one thing for sure. This was the end of the line. Lauren had shown me exactly who she was, and I wasn't going to let her drag me down any further. But I also knew I couldn't just walk away quietly. She wasn't going to get away with this unscathed. Not after everything she'd done. The pieces were all in place. It was time to finish what I'd started. The hours after leaving the hotel were a blur. My mind kept replaying that scene over and over. Lauren standing there caught red-handed, and Alex smirking like he'd won some kind of prize. The betrayal, the humiliation, it all felt like too much to bear. But when the initial shock wore off, something shifted inside me. The numbness gave way to clarity. Lauren and Alex had treated me like a fool, but they didn't realize I wasn't done. They thought they had all the power, but they underestimated just how much I could dismantle their little game. I spent the next few days in full preparation mode. My lawyer had already drafted the divorce papers, and I'd made sure to include every piece of evidence I'd collected. Texts, GPS records, photos of them at the hotel, everything. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to make sure Lauren felt the weight of her actions, not just legally, but personally. The first thing I did was cut off her access to our joint bank accounts. I transferred the funds into a separate account under my name and made sure to inform the bank of the situation. If she thought she was going to waltz out of this marriage with a financial safety net, she was sorely mistaken. Next, I went through every shared account we had, streaming services, memberships, even the grocery delivery app, and changed all the passwords. It was petty, sure, but it felt good to take back control of the little things. Then came the big move. I hired a locksmith to change all the locks on the house. I knew Lauren was going to lose it when she found out, but I didn't care. She'd made it clear she didn't respect our home or our marriage, so she didn't deserve a key to either. The final piece of the puzzle was setting up a meeting with her parents. They'd always been supportive of our marriage, and I wanted them to hear the truth from me before Lauren had a chance to spin her version of events. I scheduled a dinner at their house and planned to lay everything out. Photos, texts, and all. By the time the weekend rolled around, everything was in place. Lauren, of course, had no idea. She thought I'd just retreated into my shell, sulking as usual, and she made no effort to apologize or even acknowledge what had happened at the hotel. That Saturday morning, she came downstairs dressed in her workout clothes, sipping a protein shake. "I'll be out for a few hours," she said casually. "Take your time," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She gave me a suspicious look but didn't press further. As soon as she left, I put the final phase of my plan into action. First, I packed up her things, clothes, shoes, toiletries, everything, and neatly placed them in suitcases by the front door. Then, I printed out copies of the divorce papers and set them on top, along with a manila envelope containing all the evidence I'd collected. Finally, I left a note. "Lauren, I know everything. Consider this your eviction notice. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. The locks have been changed, and your access to our accounts has been revoked. Don't bother coming back here. Your belongings are ready for pickup. Good luck explaining this to your parents tonight. I'll be having dinner with them to tell them the truth about who you really are." "Tom?" I taped the note to the front door, grabbed my car keys, and drove to her parents' house. When I arrived, her mother greeted me with a warm smile, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. "Tom, it's so good to see you. Where's Lauren?" "She'll be here later," I said, forcing a smile. "But first, there's something I need to talk to you both about." Over the next hour, I laid everything out for them. The texts, the photos, the hotel meetings. Her parents sat in stunned silence, her mother clutching her chest while her father's face turned an alarming shade of red. "I had no idea," her mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How could she do this?" "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said, my voice heavy. But I couldn't let her keep lying to everyone. Before they could respond, the front door swung open, and there was Lauren, looking shocked to see me sitting at the dining table. "What's going on?" she demanded, her eyes darting between me and her parents. Her father stood up, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "We need to talk, Lauren. Sit down, now." For the first time, Lauren looked genuinely scared. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally taken my life back. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Lauren stood frozen in the doorway, her expression flickering between confusion and fear. "What is this?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. I leaned back in my chair, calm but resolute. "It's the truth, Lauren. Something you've been avoiding for a long time." Her father gestured sharply to the chair across from me. "Sit down, Lauren." His tone left no room for argument. She hesitated, looking at me like I was the enemy, before slowly taking a seat. "Tom, what are you doing here? Why are you talking to my parents?" I slid the manila envelope across the table toward her. "Go ahead, open it." Her hands trembled as she picked it up, pulling out the contents. Photos of her with Alex at the hotel, screenshots of their texts, even the GPS records I'd compiled. Her face went pale as she shuffled through the papers, her breathing becoming shallow. "This is insane," she muttered, shaking her head. "You've been stalking me." "Stalking?" I shot back. "You've been lying, cheating, and sneaking around for weeks, Lauren. Don't try to flip this on me." Her father slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. "Is this true, Lauren?" He barked, his voice booming. "Tell me the truth right now." Lauren's eyes filled with tears, and for a brief moment, I thought she might break down and admit everything. But instead, she did what she always did. She deflected. "It's not what it looks like," she cried, looking around the room desperately. "Alex is just a friend. Tom's twisting everything to make me look bad." I laughed bitterly. "A friend? Really? Does a friend send texts like last night was incredible? Does a friend meet you at a hotel multiple times a week?" Her mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Lauren, how could you?" Lauren glared at me, her tears now replaced with anger. "You've always been so controlling, Tom. You never let me have fun or do anything for myself. Is it any wonder I needed an escape?" Her father stood up, pointing a finger at her. "Stop blaming him, Lauren. You're the one who chose to cheat. You're the one who destroyed this marriage." Lauren's face crumpled as she realized she had no one left to manipulate. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she mumbled, finally dropping the act. "Too late for that," I said, standing up. "You've made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences." Her mother looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Tom, what happens now?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "The divorce papers are ready. She's no longer welcome in my house. I've already packed her things and she can pick them up today. This is over." Lauren shot up from her chair. "You can't do this. That's my home too." "Not anymore," I said firmly. "The locks have been changed and you have no access to our accounts. You wanted freedom, Lauren? Well, now you have it." Her father stepped in, his voice cold. "You'll stay here for now, Lauren, until you figure out what's next. But don't expect us to cover for you." Tears streamed down her face as she turned to me, her voice breaking. "Tom, please don't do this. I'll fix it, I promise. We can work through this." I shook my head, the weight of everything finally settling over me. You've already broken everything, Lauren. There's nothing left to fix. I turned and walked out, leaving her sobbing at the table. As I stepped outside and felt the cool air hit my face, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. It wasn't the ending I had imagined when we got married, but it was the one she had chosen. And now it was my turn to start over. This chapter of my life was closed, and I was ready to write the next one without her.